It's the Bradfield Weather Podcast, underwritten by Action Carpet and Floor Covering of Simsbury, a family-run business that's built for you, and by McAllen Construction, from the first dig to the last nail, and McAllen Construction does snow removal. I am Dan Lovallo. He is meteorologist Bradfield. We are putting this podcast together on January the 28th. It feels like winter. And I know, Brad, you've been taking a look at the computer models. What is going on?
Well, Dan, over the next week or so, we have several opportunities for precipitation. But I don't think anything is going to put itself together and become a major storm. But we're going to have many opportunities for getting some snow. And you were just telling me, Dan, as we put this podcast together on Tuesday morning, January 28th, you said it's looking awfully threatening out your window.
It sure is. I'm looking to the west and I see dark clouds. It reminds me of a summer thunderstorm sky, the way the clouds are dark and all, and something's rolling in is all I know.
Right. Snow squalls are very analogous to summer thunderstorms, Dan. For example, one community could see like downpours of rain and violent thunder and lightning, whereas another community may just see a dark cloud go by to the north. It's very, very similar with snow squalls. They're hit and miss. We've got 169 cities and towns in Connecticut. 10 to 20 of them today may be impacted by a snow squall. But the other 149 of them won't see a snowflake. But the people who do are going to see briefly intense, very, very heavy snow that can snarl traffic, that can put a quick coating on the roadways and so forth, that can really restrict visibility. That's the nature of snow squalls. And as we put this podcast together, it's 8:30 on Tuesday morning. The snow squall advisory is right up to the Connecticut border, right up to Salisbury. So during the course of the morning, there will be these hit and miss snow squalls going through, but they will only affect a few towns. What will affect every town is the wind and the cold that comes in after these squalls go by. For example, Dan, the temperatures out there this morning around the state generally range from about 32 to 37 right now. The snow squalls will come through, and then the temperatures will drop dramatically. We'll see you be able to watch your thermometer this afternoon go from 29 to 28 to 27 to 26. The wind is going to be howling this afternoon as well. But over the next course of the week, as you're going to see, Dan, we're going to see the ups and the downs of the temperature, and they're going to be very rapid. Some days the highs will only be in the 20s, but then the next day the high will be in the 40s, and then the next day the high will be in the 20s again. So it's a quick changing, but not too violent weather pattern.
All right. Well, from a climatology standpoint, I know you've got some interesting information. What can you tell us?
Well, I always look back on the climatology, Dan, and today I was specifically looking back on, have we started the climb towards spring yet? You know, you're always keeping track of the sunrise and the sunset and all that, and obviously the days are getting longer. But is the temperature responding? Not yet. Soon, but not yet. The normal daily high for January 28th is 35. The normal nighttime low is 18. When we look back, and you can help me with this, Dan, what it was at your house, but there were 2 days in this past week we went sub-zero here, even in the Connecticut River Valley, in the Enfield, East Windsor area. I was -2 one morning and -6 another morning this past week. Do you recall how cold it was at your place?
Well, I know we were texting in the morning. You had -6. I had -7. And the day before that, I had -6. So it did drop below zero back-to-back mornings here in Northwest Connecticut.
Yeah. You will recall from the Bradfield Weather Podcast last week, we called for that. We said there was a pretty good chance of temperatures going into the 0 to 10 below category. I think I ranked the chance at about 50-50. No sub-zero cold, but really bad wind chills will be coming. You're going to notice it this afternoon with the 20s and that wind blowing. Gusts could be in the 40 to 45 mile per hour range briefly. But the climatology that you speak of, Dan, as I was looking back to see what the climatological numbers were because of the cold spell last week, it kind of offset the warmth we had right around New Year's Day. So January 2025 is running about normal, but we were short on snow. We've had 5.5 inches. I do think we'll add a little bit to that total before the end of the month. So that's only 3 days. But in the next few days, we'll have little bits of snow here and there. Not a big storm by any means. But I was looking back, Dan, at 2011. I've got it in my head that, and it's because I'm older, but 1978, I always think of the winter of 1977, 1978. I always think of the winter of 1995, 1996. But did you know that in January of 2011, Dan, Bradley had 54.3 inches of snow?
Wow.
That is more than, that's 4.5 feet of snow on the level in January of 2011.
Yep.
So, that was only 14 years ago. So that was a prolific year in terms of snowfall.
Now, you talk about snow. Apparently, if you want snow, you have to go to Florida. Is that right?
Yeah, that was uncanny. I mean, do you know that the normal seasonal snowfall for New Orleans is 0? I mean, they don't even put 0.1 or something like that. I mean, the average is so close to 0, they call it 0. It doesn't even achieve a 0.1 on a normal year. They had at the New Orleans airport 10 inches of snow. I mean, that is incredible. And then there was snow into the panhandle, as you say, Dan. Major cities in northern Florida, such as Tallahassee and Jacksonville, getting snow. And, you look at it, we only had about, I think most of us had between 5 and 6 inches of snow in December. And most of us so far this month of January have had between 5 and 6 inches of snow. So we've only had about 10, 12 inches of snow this entire winter. When you add up the little 1 inch here, 2 inches there, you add it all up, it comes to about that. But there are places in the deep south, Dan, that have had more snow than us. So that's an interesting fact to point out.
Well, and one more fact before we get to our On the Weather Map segment. I read today there are some areas of Florida this winter, they have received more snow than in some areas of Alaska. Figure that one out.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
No, it's incredible stuff, Dan. We are in a zonal flow now, and what I mean by that is the weather map. You've got think of an ocean. You've got the waves and the troughs and the waves and the troughs. That's kind of what we have in the atmosphere. I always call it an atmospheric river of air as opposed to a river of water. And instead of having the waves and the troughs pronounced around the globe, we have more or less the steering westerlies going across our continent. So we've got like a warm front coming through, then a cold front coming through, then a warm front coming through, then a cold front coming through. And those changes are happening almost day to day to day. You need a big trough that the cold air just sort of drains into that trough. That's how we get a pattern like we had last week of a cold day, then a cold day, then a cold day, then a cold day consecutively. But when you've got this zonal pattern, you have this transitional weather pattern, and you literally need a scorecard to keep up with it. So you're literally going to have to go to bradfieldweather.com day to day to get the daily forecast, because One day is going to be in the 20s and you're going to be freezing. The wind's going to be blowing. And then the next day will be in the 40s with hardly any wind and you'll think it's spring. So that's what's going to happen over the next week or so.
Unreal. Well, we're putting this podcast together on the 28th of January. And Brad, what does our On the Weather Map segment look like?
Well, Dan, we've got an Arctic cold front moving through this morning. Now, that is the reason that we're going to have those scattered snow squalls in some communities. It could come down ferociously, but only for about 15 minutes, and then it's done. And then the wind and the cold will move on into the region. So the Arctic front moving through this morning, Tuesday morning, January 28th, and then we're in colder weather. But as I said, the zonal flow is going to be moving things along. And Dan, the weather word of the upcoming week, I'd say the next 7 days or so, 5 to 7 days, is clipper. These very weak, moisture-starved storm systems moving along the jet stream, kind of transitioning, traversing right along the Canada-U.S. border. We're going to have one tonight, and as that thing goes by, we're going to see it move from sort of like Lake Superior to the Ontario-Quebec border with northern New England. So we will be on the, quote, warm side. So what we're going to see is a quick change to colder this morning and this afternoon behind the Arctic front. So the cold air is over us. Then warm air is going to try to come back in. And as the warm air moves up and over the cold, remember, warm air is lighter molecularly. So it moves up over the more dense cold air molecules that are down near the ground. So as that happens tonight, we could see a burst of what we call overrunning snow. So I would say that's going to happen from about midnight tonight till about daybreak tomorrow morning. Tomorrow is Wednesday, January 29th. And we could see a coating from most of Connecticut overnight tonight. So the roads will, get snow covered and whatever. And there may be some school delays tomorrow morning, especially, Dan, in the towns that border Massachusetts. So with the storm traversing the New England-Canada border, the farther north you go, closer to the storm center, the more moisture you'll see, so the more snow you'll get. The hills of northern Connecticut should squeeze out some of the snow too. So most of us get a coating, but I wouldn't be shocked if some of the hill towns of northern Connecticut get an inch or two overnight tonight into Wednesday morning. So that could cause some school delays. Now, by late Wednesday, we're going to see high pressure sitting right over the Connecticut border with Lake Superior, but then we'll have another approaching clipper system coming. And by Wednesday evening, that will be off Portsmouth, New Hampshire. So, with these clippers rapidly moving by, they'll drag a warm front through, drag a cold front through, drag a warm front through, drag a cold front through. So we're going to see these quick fluctuations in temperature. So again, by Wednesday evening, January 29th, going into Thursday, January 30th, windy, cold once again. Not so much on the thermometer, but on the wind chill, the feels like temperature going to be down near zero. So Thursday, high pressure is in upstate New York, Dan. The sun will be shining, but again, temperatures only in the 20s to right around 30s. So a sharply colder day. So you get the idea. Today is cold. It will be in the 20s this afternoon once that Arctic front goes by. Tomorrow, after the morning snow, it's going to get briefly warmer, 35 to 40. Then it's sharply colder again during the day on Thursday. Friday, another clipper is coming along, another clipper passing by to our north, but it does look like there's going to be some influx of moisture coming from the Ohio Valley. So this clipper, the one coming later Friday, could be a little more prolific in terms of precipitation. But think about it now. When a storm goes by to our north, we get a southwest flow across Connecticut. It is hard to get a snowstorm or any consequential snow on a southwest wind. Why? Because Long Island Sound is off to our south. Long Island Sound is not frozen across. So you get a wind off the 38, 39, 40 degree Long Island Sound water right now. Places along I-95 do not have a chance of getting snow. They're going to have rain, Bridgeport, New Haven, over to Groton and New London with temperatures up near 40 with that wind out of the southwest. But as you work inland across Connecticut and up toward the Massachusetts border, we have enough snow cover out there on the ground and so forth that 40-degree air will cool as it goes over the snow cover. So up here in northern Connecticut, Dan, it might be 34, 35 degrees. So we have a better chance of getting some snow on Friday. So from the Clipper coming Friday and Friday night, I'm calling for a mix or some snow in northern Connecticut, and I'm calling for a mix or some rain in southern Connecticut. Now that thing goes by, and then it turns windy and colder again over the weekend. Saturday morning, we've got high pressure over Lake Superior. We've got a strong northerly wind across Connecticut, a cold Saturday. The European computer model only gives us a high of about 20 on Saturday. But I'm using more of a blend of the computer models, Dan, so I'm going to call it a high of maybe 25 to 30. But if it's colder than that on Saturday, remember that's a win for the European computer model. Sunday, we start off cold. Let's call it 0 to 15 on Sunday morning. Again, how much do the winds slacken on Saturday night? If the winds go calm, we're going to get down to 0 again. But I think the wind will stay up a little bit, so we'll call it 0 to 15 across Connecticut on Sunday morning. But you will not believe it. Another clipper coming for Sunday night and Monday morning. And again, this one could be a little bit of snow and mix across interior Connecticut, a little bit of rain and mix across southern Connecticut. Monday is a transitional day, and then that gets us to a week from today, Dan, back to next Tuesday. It looks really, really cold again. So, what can I say except transition and clippers are the two weather words of the upcoming week.
Well, there you go. And on that note, and once more, we're putting this podcast together on January the 28th. What does our immediate forecast look like?
All right, Dan. I don't know if you're going to turn this podcast around fast enough to get this out there, but there could be a morning snow shower or morning snow squall today. But all that is doing is transitioning in the wind and the cold that are going to come in this afternoon. And as I said, Dan, you will be able to watch the temperature drop this afternoon through the 20s, and the wind is going to be gusting past 40 miles per hour. Now, tonight, we've got clipper number one coming along, late night snow. Most of us are going to get a coating. Some of the northern hill towns up toward the Massachusetts border will get an inch or two of snow tonight, Dan, with temperatures between 16 and 22 degrees across the region. So a coating to an inch or two tomorrow morning could mean some school delays for Wednesday morning, especially within, say, 25 miles of the Massachusetts border. Now, for Wednesday, partly sunny. There may be a late day rain or snow shower as temperatures tomorrow are briefly warmer, up between 38 and 44 degrees. Much colder on Wednesday night. Temperatures dropping to between 8 and 16 with a whole lot of wind, Dan. Thursday looks sunny, breezy, very cold. Temperatures on Thursday between 26 and 32. Friday, for the last day of January, we are looking at rain or a light mix. temperature between 40 and 45. And at night, the light mix may change to snow in Connecticut, and the light rain may change to a mix in southern Connecticut. Again, only minor to light accumulations. That would be in the Friday night range. The weekend looks colder again, mostly sunny, breezy, and colder on Saturday, temperatures in the 20s. Sunday, another clipper comes along, sun, then increasing clouds, the wintry mix on Sunday night of mainly a mix and rain in southern Connecticut, mainly a mix and snow in northern Connecticut. Again, light accumulations are indicated. For Monday, partly sunny, briefly milder because we're right ahead of the Arctic boundary. But next Monday is going to be like today, Dan. We're going to start off in the 30s, end up in the 20s with a lot of wind. And then Tuesday, much colder, breezy, and temperatures in the 20s.
Okay, and all the information is updated at bradfieldweather.com. And Brad, to you and Sandy and our podcast and radio audience, thanks for listening and watching, and be safe.
And to you and Susan, Dan, all the best, my friend.
Thanks, Brad. The Bradfield Weather Podcast has been underwritten by McAllen Construction. McAllen Construction, from the first dig to the last nail. And McAllen Construction also does snow removal. And by Action Carpet and Floor Covering of Simsbury, a family-run business that's built for you.